Load. So statistics, technology assignments, the rubric. Just so you know, so that last technology assignment didn't have a discussion component. This one will. All right, I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But this technology assignment is going to have a bit where you have to post in your discussion in the discussion board. And I'll tell you what that prompt is going to be all about. All right. So let me split the screen and get going here. So the same preamble like all the other one, or well, all the other ones. The other one is that you could work together, but you're submitting your own work. You can talk amongst yourselves, get ideas, get some help, but then you ultimately have to submit your own product, and then it's also an extension of the stuff that we've been working on in class. All right, so click on the assignment, and it brings you to this page. And again, just the important note is brought up again, of course it is. Go to Google and create an account if you don't already have one. And then click on that little waffle jammy and go to Sheets. All right, if it doesn't show up, if it's not there, sometimes I get frustrated and I don't want to look for it. Just go to google.com/sheets and it'll get you where you need to go. All right, so I'm going to click on Sheets. I'm going to go for a blank one. For the sake of me not going absolutely crazy when I get all your share submissions, like I say, have this naming convention when you name your file, but bottom line is just get your name in it somewhere. I get a lot of untitled spreadsheets when people submit their work. It's really kind of tough to keep that organized, right? So just get your last name. If your last name's a common last name, you got a little Smith action going on, maybe a first initial, Tech B, there you go, TAB. Keep it simple. Don't even go too crazy. Stat Paul 20. It just loosely related to the naming convention. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just give me something that I can look at and say, okay, I know what you're talking about. Last name, tech assignment B, the class. All right. I only have one stat class this semester, so it's fine. All right. You can watch, this is the issue. It says watch the short video on central limit theorem, but apparently that link isn't clickable, so I'll make sure that that's posted somewhere. I just haven't figured out where I'm going to post it yet, but I'll probably do it through the Remind app, but I'll get that there for you. Central limit theorem is really important. And it's going to be a focus of a lot of stuff that we do going down the line. So we want to make sure that we're pretty solid on that. All right. So activity 1, single die simulation. You have the blank, all this stuff. I just walked through it again. Click share and then copy the link and make sure you give me permission to edit. So if you click on share, oh, I don't know where that came in. Click on share. It'll bring share options. You want to share it with me and then also give me the option to edit it. All right. So share is the best bet is to share it to my Google account, tcan290@gmail. All right. If you share it to my school one, that's fine too, but it's a lot easier for me if you share it to the Gmail account, which is listed here. You'll know because it has the Giants t-shirt, right? You'll see at the bottom where it says restricted. We want to change that. We're going to change it to anyone with the link becomes an editor, all right? The reason why I want you to do that is because when you send me a message saying, I can't get this to work, this dang thing, it's not working, I tried everything. I can open your link. I can look in there, and if it's something quick that I can change for you, what I'll do is I'll make the change because it's really for the learning experience. I'll make the change and then I'll put in the comments what change I made and why I changed it. All right, so it's more of a collaborative thing. where we're working together to create a product rather than me testing you on the knowledge. All right. If I was testing you on the knowledge, I would say just create a simulation, figure it out on your own. This is more so that you can learn through the experience. All right. So this tech assignments aren't tests. You can ask questions. You can ask questions from me. You can ask questions from your classmates. All right. So there's a lot of different options. All right. So definitely take advantage of that. One step along that line or along that journey is to change it so that anyone with the link is an editor. Copy the link and send it to me, or you could directly share it by putting my information in. But what a lot of people will do just as a preliminary step before they submit it on Blackboard, what they'll do is they'll copy the link and send that to me on Remind as kind of like an unofficial submission. Hey, could you have a quick look at this and let me know if there's any glaring mistakes? All right. So just a thought. So what we're going to do is a simulation. I'll talk more about the tech assignment answer form because that's another link that's not working. So I'll get the links out to you. But your final answer, your final submission, you could just put it in Blackboard anyway. So if anything, I'm probably just going to delete step 3. So what we want to do is roll a single die 500 times. All right, now imagine doing that by hand. That would be pretty terrible. You wouldn't want to have to do that. All right, now, if you didn't know how to do it using technology and that's the only thing you could do, that would be pretty necessary, but we have technology, so it's not necessary. I told students I made a rookie mistake like 15 years ago. I was like, listen, you can do it. We were using graphing calculators at that point. I said, you can do it using the graphing calculator and a simulator, or you can if you want the day of the test, you could just bring in some dice, and if you need to roll them, roll them. The sound of people rolling dice on a classroom desk during a test, it was the dumbest thing I ever suggested ever, because it was jarring. And there were people in the class that would be like, is this going to happen all the whole time? Like, how am I supposed to concentrate? So technology, definitely the way to go here. So what we're going to do is in the first cell, we're just going to type in this command, rand between. You probably guess what that means. Select a random number between 1 and 6 equals rand between. Good thing about Google Sheets and Excel is oftentimes if you think you have an idea of what the command is, just start typing it. It's going to come up. All right, equal sign anytime you're doing a mathematical command. 1, 6, it'll pick a number between 1 and 6. All right, you could also get, if you click on functions, well, in Excel, if you click on the FX, it'll bring up possible functions for you to choose from. But Google Sheets is different enough from Excel where it's like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do it that way. But if I type in an equal sign here and hit that little question mark, sometimes some useful things come up, but I find it's better off just knowing the command. What I also have found is that the Google Sheets developers are kind of ripoffs. I think what they do is they have a lot of hidden features in Google Sheets that work exactly the same way as Excel, except they don't put all the commands related to Excel in Google Sheets. So like if you go looking in drop downs under the data menu, you're not going to find all the things that are specific to Excel. But what you could do, and this is what a lot of people do, and this is what Google wants you to do, you do all the work in Excel and then copy it all over to Google Sheets, because it understands the Excel language. I think that's kind of a cheap ripoff, but it is what it is. All right. So I have this rand between. I can do one of two things. I can copy, or I can do a little drag down the line. So you grab that little boxy thing. You see how my cursor becomes a little plus sign? And then I just drag it on down the line. I got to go 500 times. So it goes pretty quick, even for a web-based application, or app, as they say. And so now we have a fresh set of random values. All right, so if I want to equate this to, for example, the game of roulette at a casino, like I think it maybe I have a really good strategy for the game of roulette. Do I want to try my strategy with real money, my hard-earned money, to find out that, oh wow, that really wasn't a good strategy? Probably not. What I could do though is come up with a random set of outcomes and then try my strategy out with those random sets of outcomes. So that's another possible application of this stuff. So there's good stuff happening here, and the beauty of doing it on Excel and sheets and stuff like that is when you make it, it's yours to keep, right? So when you have this outcome, it's a single die simulation. All right, well, what if you expanded it to 2 dice? Could this then be used as a simulator for the game of craps in a casino? Absolutely. Right? So just something to consider. Right? So we're already through step 5 here. Now what we want to do is create a frequency histogram. Right? So frequency histogram is pretty straightforward. What you're going to do is just click on an empty cell somewhere, go to insert, you'll see an option for chart. Right? Generally you want to have the information highlighted, but you don't have to. First, I'll do it with it highlighted first. Insert. So all I did was I clicked on column A. So I didn't click on a cell in column A. I clicked on column A itself. Right. Insert, chart, and you see you have this. This came up for me. Might look different for you, especially if you're following along. Maybe yours came up as a bar chart. Maybe it came up as a candlestick chart or something like that. Right. Google Sheets just goes with what it thinks that you want. Well, we don't want it thinking too much, because otherwise it might hurt itself. So we go to the chart type, drop down, and go to the one that says or looks like a histogram. You see, you got a little pie chart here. I want a histogram. All right. So we're almost there. We almost have the kind of histogram that we would want. The problem is our scaling values are a little bit off. Right. So let me just show you real quick. So first off, click on it and drag it out of the way a little bit so it's in a more convenient location, and you could resize and all that stuff. But if you look at it carefully, you can see here that I have some values in the 1 to 1.25. I mean, we're rolling dice here. 1.25, that doesn't sound reasonable. 2 to 2.25. I mean, I'm guessing that this is telling me that I had 75 ones and something over 75 twos and threes. It seems reasonable, but not really. Like I want it to look a little bit cleaner than that. So I can redo the chart, I can delete it and bring it back in, or I can right click it somewhere and go into these different options. Right? Chart area, resize the chart area, chart style, right? We just kind of talked about that. Chart axis and titles and stuff like that. Let me click on chart style again. You can see here that it brings up the histogram, the chart and axis titles and all that stuff. I can play around with that, but I do want to get my numbers to look right, right? So we have the setup and we have customize. So in setup, you look at the different options: histogram chart, the series of values, what numbers is it being used? Is the x-axis going to show? That's what that means. So this looks like it's pretty much everywhere we want it to be. Everything is looking pretty good here. But if I customize, I can change the colors. If I want my background color to be a little spicier, that's good. This is basically the look and feel of it. All right.
Professor,
Yes.
quick question for the data range. I see that yours said A1 to 500. Does that change, or is it supposed to say that? For example, mine says A225 to A330.
Right. So it should be A1 to A500 because we want to account for all the values in that column A. So you're going to want to, so you want to delete your histogram or manipulate those values. If you delete your histogram, then highlight all the values from A1 to A500 and then insert the chart again. Or you could just change those numbers when you go into your setup here. Like just physically go in and change your one, you know, instead of it, you know, like let's say I had it as a 200 to 500. See, that's only, can't really tell based off of this, but it's only taking into account the values between 200 and 500. So it's losing all of those other values. All right. So what you do is you go in in your setup and just manually change it so that it's 1 to 500. And then it'll auto correct it. All right. So then as you're working your way down the line, you see that there's an option here for histogram. I don't like that naming of it because it's like histogram within a histogram. Well, I already know it's a histogram. What could it possibly offer me? Well, here it says bucket size. All right. Now, buckets, bins, and intervals all mean the same thing. All right. So here it's saying auto. So the width of each of these intervals is determined, and I'm just going to kind of expand my screen a little bit, is determined based off of whatever Google's algorithms tell us or tell it to. I don't want it to go by its own intuition. I want it to go by mine. So I'm going to change that to 1 because we're talking about discrete values. The number 1, the number 2, the number 3, the number 4, number 5, number 6. All right. So that gets me where I want to go because now I'm looking at some values that are a whole lot more reasonable than what they were. Right. As far as the chart titles and stuff like that, histogram is fine for the title, but the horizontal axis, right? If I hit the drop down here, horizontal axis title, I can give that a title. We could say intervals, you know, intervals in frequency. I mean, we're used to that, but you could also be a little bit more specific, right? So you could say the side of a die, right? A number on a die, outcome, whatever you want. I'll say outcome. Right, so it gives a little title here. It's hard to see, but once I close this out, it'll all come up. Then I could just hit the little drop down, hit vertical axis title. That one's much easier. No thinking involved. That's always frequency. All right, and you could tweak, you know, things like font size and stuff like that, but I leave that up to you. All right, all the other stuff like series. Where's the information coming from? What color do you want it to be? You know, like that's all up to you. I can let you take creative license over that. The legend, or at least the key to interpreting the information. Where do you want it? Do you want it on the bottom, the top, the left, the right, or do you not care? Auto means you don't care. All right. Horizontal axis, again, just how you're labeling all that stuff. Same thing for the vertical axis. And then finally the, let me close that out. The grid lines, right? Grid lines and ticks, right? So major spacing types. Do you want it to be auto? Do you want it to go by 1s, which wouldn't really make sense? Do you want it to go by 2s? You know, I'm sorry, not go by 2s, but have two major grid lines, you know, 4 major grid lines. You know, you could have more of them if you want. You could have less of them, or you could just let Google figure it out. For the minor, maybe you don't want to have any of them. Maybe you want to know what these little fine values are here. So you can change, you can manipulate your minor grid line count any way you want, all right? Because we're going to get the numbers a different way. So I leave this part of it entirely up to you. So there's a whole lot of stuff where it's like, yeah, it's kind of up to you. The only things that you need to make sure is that your bucket width is 1 and that it's properly labeled, all right? So this is what that graph ought to look like. I'm going to just kind of zoom it out a little bit. Make it a little bit more, visible, right? So that's what the histogram's looking like, and it's pretty not bad. I mean, hopefully, when you look at it, you see a little consistency with what your expectations would be, right? Because when you roll a die, each outcome is equally as likely as every other outcome. So when you roll that die, you should expect a roughly uniform distribution. It shouldn't be like one's way up here and one's way down here. you should be kind of hovering around the same value. So they're all in the 75 to 100 interval, right? So that's pretty good. All right, we got all this information, but what I want to do, so you see in C1 and C2, so I'm telling you specifically to where to put values, so that we got to create some room. In C1 and C2, we type in mean and standard deviation, right? Because I want those values. So mean, I'll put a little colon there to make it look nice. I mean, even though it says to do it too. You'll notice that every change I make, so standard deviation, right? So I'm gonna hit enter. Take a look at the column A and take a look at the histogram. When I hit enter, everything changed. Oh no, that's terrible. No, it's perfectly fine. It's random data, random. All right, that's the key word, random. So that operation is happening every time I hit enter, but also if you consider, like if you're working with somebody else and you're looking over their work and they're looking over yours and you say, why are your numbers different from mine? Let's go back to that word, random. If I roll a die and you roll a die, there's no guarantee they're going to give us the same outcomes. All right. So in D1 and D2, what we're going to do is we are going to type in the command average and ask Google Sheets to come up with the average of the values in A1 to A500. Now you can click and drag and all that. I just find it's easier to type it. All right, so you type in average. You don't have to worry about caps versus not caps. It automatically corrects it anyway. It's going to take the average or the mean of the entries from A1 to A500. So you hit enter, and we got an average value of 3.51. You can also figure out the standard deviation, also A1 to A500. Hit enter, and again, you'll see all the numbers are going to change. Every time you hit enter, all the numbers are going to change, but that's the fun part of it. All right, these numbers are going to fluctuate, but they're always going to be around the same values. All right, it's going to be in the neighborhood of 3.5 and 1.75. All right, so what these are actually the population mean and standard deviations. I'm sorry, sample mean and sample standard deviations. What you're going to learn about through this activity is how that relates to population means and standard deviation. So in the last unit, I said, well, we're not going to worry about population information, or we're only going to worry about sample information. I meant it for that unit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bridge the gap between the sample information and the population information. It's pretty interesting stuff. All right. I'm going to continue on here because, normally what I would do is I would just kind of stop and have people, try this part of it. And then in the next class, I would pick it up with the rest. But, I think, honestly, that carrying out this process isn't going to be the hard part. It's going to be answering the follow-up questions. So I'd rather just kind of bang this out at this point. All right. So what you're going to do is create random samples. Right, you're going to create random samples from that list of 500 randomly selected values. And so when I post that video about the central limit theorem, it'll become more and more clear why that's happening. But for now, we're just following steps. So I'm just going to move that down, the graph down and a little bit out of the way, because what I need are a total of 10 random values from the set. All right, so I'm going to just type in this set of commands. I'm going to get a little sneaky here. Hopefully it'll work, because I'm copying it from a PDF, so sometimes it's a little glitchy. But we have our samples. We're going to have sample 1. And so what we're going to do is input that command, and what it's going to do is it's going to pull a value from, at random, it's going to pull a value from column A. All right? So it's indexing a value between A1 and A500. All right. I didn't really need the dollar signs for this computation, but as I copy and paste, I'll need it. Otherwise, it's going to change the ones into twos and the 500s into 501. So we wanted to keep it this way. And it's also it's going to base that off of a random selection between 1 and 500. So more on why that works the way it does next time, but for now, we're just copying and pasting, and it's pulling a random set of 10 values. All right, so we're doing this in F2 through F11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 values. All right, so then we'll have sample 2. All right, and then we'll have sample 3, sample 4, and so on. But before we do that, we're gonna, in E12, we're gonna type in the mean of the sample. So again, I'm just gonna do a little copy paste action here. And you can too. I mean, it is a PDF document, so a PDF file, I should say. So you'll be able to do that also. All right, so just pasting it in, you see it's average F2 to F11. So this is the average of the values, the ever-changing values in the column F going from 2 to 11. All right. So then we do the Control-C, Control-V, copy-paste action. We want 9 more samples of size 10 in columns G through O. And then we find the mean for each of those, right? So fortunately, copy-paste is a thing. If you drag, because they're consecutive values in our samples, if you just drag the corners of the boxes, so I typed in sample 1 and sample 2 so that Google Sheets knew that I was doing, it's keeping sample the same, but changing the numbers, going from 1 to 2 to 3 and so on. It knew that I was good to go there. So then what I can do here, just do it the one time. If you compare, you see that this is my index A1 to A500, random between, right? So these are good. And then this is referencing G2 to G11, which is precisely what I wanted. So now I can just highlight the column and just drag it until I run out of samples. And now I have everything I need. All right. So the hard work happens in the beginning. I mean, actually, the hard work is really just coming up with the commands that you would use in Excel or Google Sheets to begin with. But I did that for you. But the onus is on me to explain how I knew to do that. That's like I said, that's going to come next time. All right. But for now, it's just a skill. So then in in E13, I'm going to type in the mean of the sample means. Like what? So each one of these values, and I'll highlight it. I'll give it a different color here. Let's see, what do we want to do? We'll do yellow. These are some sample means. So what we did is we created samples of size 10 from each, if each one of those samples is of size 10 from that list of 500 values. We found the mean of each one of those samples of size 10, right? Well, Google Sheets did, right? So now what I want to do is find the mean of this list of information. That's the mean of the sample means, all right? Because right above that is the mean of a sample. Let me get rid of these quotes. I mean, it's not bad to have them, but I want to get rid of them. All right. And then standard deviation of the samples. Oh, wrong place. And the quotes are still there. All right. So then I'm just going to pop in this command. I'm taking the average of all the values between F F12 and O12. All right, F12 to O12. That's going to go right, yeah. And then the standard deviation of the values between F12 and O12. All right. So these are some sample standard, mean and sample standard deviations from that list of values. So I'll give that a different color. I'll give it like a nice, nice green hue, if you will. All right. So the follow-up questions are going to be a little tricky, at least for the time being, because I don't have that video up for you yet. But this is the skill. This is the tech part of the tech assignment. All right. This is the part that you need to worry about at this point, because this is just reproducing my process. All right. Learning from this is going to be a little bit more interesting. All right. But this is what we're going to build off of, because when we talk about the central limit theorem, which gets us like really heading hard into the third unit, that we're going to be relying on this information. It's really, really important. All right. So my job at this point is to make sure that you have access to that central limit theorem video. So I'll make sure that that's posted on Remind in a little bit, and also that form that was mentioned in the PDF file. But if you can get this part of it done, then you've gotten the lion's share of the work completed. And then next class, I'll talk you through the central limit theorem so that you can answer the follow-up questions. And I'll give you an opportunity to collaborate with one another so that you can cross the T's and dot the I's. All right. So at this point, I'm going to stop the recording.